The Amber Heard Johnny Depp verdict is out. And I think this is actually a very good thing for America at this point in time. I'm going to explain why. Plus, we get news that Facebook's #2 is departing. What does that mean for the stock? What does it mean for the company? We're going to get into it. And also, Elon Musk has a warning to anybody who doesn't want to show up in person for work. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Trish. It's wonderful to have you here. A quick reminder, do me this favor. Make sure you subscribe to the channel right now on Rumble, on YouTube, wherever you are watching this, and make sure you download the full audio version. You can subscribe to the podcast, The Trish Regan Show, on Apple iTunes or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. It's really important that you hit the alert button. Make sure you hit the bell so that you're notified every time we have a new show, which actually is 5 days a week. So you'll be getting a lot of bells, I hope. Anyway, I want to get into all of this. Before we do, a quick reminder that portions of today's program are brought to you by Legacy Precious Metals. There's never been a better time to invest in precious metals like gold than right now, especially with all the inflation coming our way. I do believe Jamie Dimon was pretty concerned. He said in a conference just this week that it's an economic hurricane he's anticipating as the Fed tries to deal with the inflation that's now pretty rampant. So all the more reason to be protected for the long haul. Gold has been around forever. Go to Legacy Precious Metals to get more information, legacypminvestments.com. All right, let's get to Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, the trial of the century, right? I mean, my gosh, this thing was way too much information. Like, TMI, guys. I really didn't want to know about all this. And I'm not someone who was glued to social media, tracking it all, but it still was all, the incoming was a lot, right? I mean, I think we all, even if you're not following it, just on the periphery, we got it just inundated with stuff that, well, you know, basically I just didn't even really want to ever have to think about. So we now know way too much information about these two individuals, but I'm telling you what the jury did and what that decision came through as, I think is very important at this particular time in our culture. And I say that because there's a whole lot of accusations going on right now about everyone, right? And so what this tells you, and by the way, let me at least give you the verdict. The jury awarded $15 million to Johnny Depp. So basically, he had a big win in this because he had said that Ms. Heard, his former wife, actually was acting with very deliberate malice when she published a big article in which she talked about being the victim of domestic abuse, and it hurt his career. He wound up losing his Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. He was supposed to make a lot of money in that, and so consequently, he sued her for $50 million. She in turn countersued with a $100 million lawsuit. What's interesting to me, at least from a sort of both legal and societal standpoint, is that the jury's verdict in this, and we'll see if it holds, right? Don't forget, like, this could go to an appeal, but the 7-member jury basically found that she did act with malice. And there was some, I guess, provision for her. She was able to prove one of the 3 claims of defamation that she had encountered against him based on some statements made by one of her attorneys. And so the jury awarded her $2 million in compensatory damages for that. But what the takeaway here is that you can't say things or even imply things about people that are not true, right? The truth being always the best defense. And in this particular case, she was not able to prove that he was abusive to her. So that's pretty darn significant. I mean, don't forget, he had to prove that she did this with actual malice. Truth is a defense, so you can, say whatever you want as long as it's true, and you can prove it's true. And I guess in this case, she could not prove that it was true. Now, for a celebrity like Johnny Depp, there needs to be the ability to prove that they were libeled with actual malice, which means in this case, Amber Heard knew or should have known reasonably that the allegation was false and that this would be very hurtful to him. And so in this case, for a wife to allege that her husband had abused her and she couldn't convince a jury of that, well, then it's hard to allege that it wasn't done with actual malice, which is how you get to the $15 million that is being awarded to Johnny Depp. The implication of this, many will say, is that it's going to suppress women from coming forward, and this isn't right because now how can a woman come forward and make an accusation about a man? I would say that what's important here is that if you do make accusations, that they can be proven, right? In other words, the challenge in this kind of very sort of witch hunt-like environment is that everybody becomes extremely vulnerable to accusations that people may want to make, and that's not great, right? I mean, again, I want to always believe people when they make these accusations, but in this case, she wasn't able to prove it. If she can't prove it, then why did she write this? Maybe, she felt this, but to actually write it, she would have been needing to be able to prove it. So a long-winded way of saying, you just can't say whatever you want, okay? Like, I'm all for free speech, but you can't just shout stuff off about someone, accuse them of something, have their lives effectively ruined, which is what he has said. He lost his job on the Pirates of Caribbean movie, and his life was sort of ruined. I mean, I think one of the statements he made was he was happy because he was going to get his life back. So I think that's an important thing for the world to kind of hear right now, that you need to be truthful in accusations that are made. Anyway, an organization that is always working to protect every American is one I want to briefly tell you about right now before we move on to Elon Musk and his expectations for those that work for his company, as well as Sheryl Sandberg leaving Facebook. What does that mean for the company? We'll get into it. But first, I want to tell you about Amac, the Association of Mature American Citizens. It's a wonderful, wonderful group that's working every single day in Washington and all over the country to protect your values and mine. They're standing up for conservatives, which, let's face it, I think we need a little bit of standing up for right now. This is what Amac is doing. And they have all kinds of wonderful plans that you can choose from, from sort of retirement ideas to healthcare to travel and discounts. Lots and lots of discounts on cell phone plans, on travel plans, on all kinds of things, airfare discounts, hotels. So I'd like you to check it out because your money would be going to very good use, both, personally for yourself in terms of all those great discounts, but also in terms of what they're able to accomplish there in Washington, D.C., because there's more than 2 million members. Think about that. So you're joining forces with more than 2 million members to help look out for values that I know you care about. Freedom being number one, right? We need to be able to protect our freedom as Americans. So go to amac.us/Regan, R-E-G-A-N, my last name. By the way, if you are already a member, you can re-up your membership, which would be great. It's only $16 a year, so this is nothing, and you will make the money back in probably your first week. So do check it out, amac.us/Regan. I want to turn now to the Facebook news. Facebook news that is pretty interesting. Sheryl Sandberg, after 14 years at the company, is leaving. She's out, she's done, and I actually think this is probably good news for the company. Shareholders may get nervous at first, but there are serious challenges for Facebook in the years ahead, in part just because the company's become so big and so set in its ways, and the internet's about to change drastically. Web 3.0, as some call it, the metaverse, as some call it, Facebook is changing its name, already has to Meta. And the ticker symbol is going to change on the 9th of June to META, Meta. This is a massive switch, change, and sort of the new the new leg in this whole technology revolution, if you would. So I think this is actually the biggest challenge for Facebook going forward. I mean, how do they compete and how do they succeed in Web 3.0? And you may be saying, okay, well, what is that? Why does it matter? Look, I like to compare it to that Disney ride, Soarin', which is incredible at Epcot Center. And if you've never been on it, I highly suggest you, if you get the chance to go to Disney, do go, because it really helps to explain in some ways what the future of the internet is. I'm talking to you here, but I'm in this like TV screen, right? Like I'm not actually with you physically. And in Web 3.0, I think we're going to be in a whole different sort of universe where myself in a form of an avatar, or even, you know, whatever form this is taking through video, will be with you, and we can communicate more directly. It's going to be effectively 3D instead of 2D. And how does a company like Facebook move forward towards that? I mean, already Mark Zuckerberg has been really criticized, and shareholders have not been happy with his money pit that is the metaverse. They don't like that he's investing so much in this, but he's a smart guy, and I think he recognizes that this is the future. But how do you go towards the future when what you're doing is doing well, right? I mean, granted, the stock's suffering. It's at $188 or so a share right now after having been near 400 just within the last 12 months. So shareholders are like, okay, well, what are you doing? Don't waste money on some pipe dream in the future. We want you focused on the here and now and printing as much advertising revenue as you can. And the company clearly has done a very, very good job of that. But who's on Facebook now? I mean, maybe you are and you're watching this, and that's great. I love that you're there, but I think there's going to be a whole new sort of crop of social media companies that keep coming forward, and they're going to have new and innovative ideas. And that's going to be more challenging for Facebook. So they've got to basically get their leadership team aligned with the future so that they don't become something of the past. That'll mean, you know, allowing more diverse viewpoints, shall we say, on Facebook. That's just important. Every social media company should do that. And also thinking about how we make this part of the future going forward. And I think the metaverse is going to have a huge role in that. I think the blockchain is going to have a huge role in all of that. And I think that there's a chance really for all of us in this new Web 3.0 to kind of have an ownership stake in our own data, right? So it's Big Brother, but maybe with the possibility of all of us having a little skin in the game, so to speak, via some of the NFTs and blockchain possibilities that are out there. And I could talk about this all day. And I need to do a podcast, I think, just on the future of the metaverse because it's so important. But bottom line, you know, Sheryl Sandberg, it's possible that shareholders liked her because she was concerned about the bottom line and she helped give that sort of professionalism to Facebook that it needed at the time. But at this point, it's kind of, you know, you got to go all in if you're this company. You got to think about the future, and maybe it'll be a little bit painful now. I don't think that the downside is done in the stock. I mean, it's 188 now. I might be more interested if it gets down to 170 or lower. I think there are challenges ahead, but if they can find a path forward to the future, it's still likely a worthy investment. Turning to Elon Musk. Actually, before we turn to Elon Musk, I want to get a good plug in here for our friends over at Key City Capital. We're going to get to Elon Musk and his plan for workers that don't want to come to work in a second. But I want to point out that Charlie Dombeck is going to be back on the show tomorrow. So I encourage you to listen to that episode or to tune in on YouTube or on Rumble, because Charlie works with Key City Capital, of course, and they are all about finding other investments in this environment, not just the equity market, okay? Not just the stock market. What other things can you invest in that will generate a return in this environment? I think that the reality is this: the stock market's going to be choppy for a while. It just is. And I've warned you of that for some time. I think that valuations got ahead of themselves. We're now looking at the reality of a recession, which is going to be very, very hard to avoid. I know everybody wants to, but you know, you kept printing all that money. Thank you, Jerome Powell, for so long. Thank you, Joe Biden, with all the stimulus efforts. And now we're trying to scale back inflation, and it's a very challenging thing to do and not go into recession. All right, typically when the Fed raises rates, as much as they're going to have to now. You go into recession, and when you're in a recession, you're in a bear market. And so this is one of the reasons why you might want to be looking at other investments at a time like this. So tune in tomorrow and listen to Charlie yourself. And in the meantime, get more information at keycitycapital.com/Trish, my first name. Again, that's keycitycapital.com/Trish, and Charlie Dombeck will be on tomorrow. Turning now to Elon Musk and his big memo that's causing a lot of people to get a little bit nervous, especially probably over at Twitter, since they're really into the work from home thing. Anyway, Elon's not buying it. He doesn't like it. He's telling Tesla employees, you know what, you're either coming back into the office full time or you're going to find another job, because we're all about innovating. We need to have everybody together to engage in this innovation. And up in the office, he said, for a minimum of 40 hours a week, or find work elsewhere. Let me quote from the memo, which was first reported by Electric. Anyone who wishes to do remote work must be in the office for a minimum, and I mean minimum, of 40 hours per week, or depart Tesla. This is less than we ask of factory workers, he writes. That's an interesting point. You know, I've always been of the mindset that you don't need to physically be there to have, the best optimal environment for a company. But what has bothered me about the last year and a half and change is that there almost seems to be two classes of workers, right? People who can work from home and people who can't. And that's troubling. Like in a whole lot of ways, because if you had a job in which you were using intellect, right, your intellectual power, you were able to be out of the office. But as Elon Musk points out, that the factory workers, they're on the floor, right? They have to physically be there every day. And so it's an interesting distinction, and one that I think has really become prominent in this environment over the last couple of years. I mean, how is it that all the tech workers can Skype in from wherever, or Zoom in for meetings and work on their computer, but everybody else, the rank and file, actually has to physically be there? It's something to think about, and I think this is what he's touching upon. Let me read from the memo again. He said, if there are particular exceptional contributors for whom this is impossible, I will review and approve those exceptions directly. So a little bit of a message there to anyone at Tesla. If you don't like this policy, go see Elon and he'll show you the door, or not. He said, there are of course companies that don't require this, but when was the last time they shipped a great new product? It's been a while, he sent, and this was actually a second email. He added that it's important for senior employees to show their presence, right? Because that's the leadership. And it's the reason why he said, lived in the factory so much when Tesla was first coming about. He said Tesla would have gone bankrupt had he not. Interesting point here too. I can remember a wonderful family that owned a restaurant in New Hampshire where I grew up. And I'll tell you, the owner was there morning, noon, and night, 7 days a week. It was sort of amazing, the sort of presence of this person, always there at the restaurant. And he said you had to be, right? It was his business. The employees were there. He couldn't leave. And this is sort of what Elon Musk is telling you too. Car factory, but he's like, I have to be there. So leadership needs to be present. A very interesting thing to say in a time like this, and something to ponder. I mean, I have mixed feelings about this, only because there isn't always a need to have people physically present. I've made the point, especially when women are having kids, for example, right? I felt the need to be right back at work practically, just weeks after I gave birth, because how could I not, right? Like if I was committed. But the truth is, I didn't really need to be right back at work. It's something that I felt compelled to do. So I've always made a real point of telling women, you need to prioritize your life. And part of this, zooming in or working from home means that women are being afforded an opportunity to prioritize their life. However, I would say this, only a certain class of women, right? those that are using their intellectual capital. If you're a factory worker, doesn't matter, you are there on the floor. So he's bringing up an interesting debate and an interesting time, and I think one we should continue to discuss and think through. So I'll leave you with that. Quick reminder, do make sure that you subscribe, you like, you share the podcast. It's very helpful when you do. Do make sure that you subscribe to this channel. Make sure that you give it that thumbs up, or whatever platform you're on, a like, because this is how we get seen and we break through some of those barriers. So thank you again for watching, and I will see you back here tomorrow.